Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and welcome to this episode, which is we're actually approaching episode number 800, where we've got a few to go, but we're getting close. Bernadette Smith coming in all the way from Chicago, Illinois, with a background that's very similar to mine in terms of yellow. Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast.
It is great to be here with you, Darren. Thank you. And congratulations on almost 800 episodes. As a fellow podcaster, I know what a labor of love it is. So congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm not sure about you because you were sharing with me before we press record that you've been live streaming for a few years and podcasting for 2, and you've done a couple of 100 episodes. I was thinking that if I could get to 80 episodes, because I had 80 articles that I'd written, and I thought if I could turn those into a podcast episode, I'll be done. And I think,
there you
hey,
go.
I've just kept on talking.
There's always, everyone has a story, right? There's always more to learn. In every conversation, we can learn something.
Absolutely, absolutely. And today's conversation will be no different. I'm looking forward to this. So Bernadette, you've been running a business. You're the CEO of Equality Institute, and you've been running that business for a number of years now. We're going to talk all things sales leadership, the ARC method, diversity, and just making sure you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me? That's okay.
I can hear you.
Perfect.
I can hear you.
Oh, you just froze. This is the wonders of technology, and this is the wonders of, hey, imagine if we were live streaming. It'll be like,
yeah, right.
So you've been running Equality Institute since the late 2000s, 2009, I think, from memory.
Yeah, so I've been speaking since 2009, but I actually started my very first business in 2004, back in Massachusetts, in Boston, Massachusetts, where I used to live in the U.S. And Massachusetts was the first state in the country to have marriage equality for same-sex couples.
Yep.
So I actually started my first business as a wedding planner for LGBTQ couples, which taught me pretty much everything I know about sales. When you're working and customer service, because when you are working with wedding clients, there's a lot that can go wrong, and there's a lot of hand holding that has to happen, and there's a lot of vulnerability in that experience.
Absolutely. So I love to always delve into, I guess, backgrounds in terms of what you're doing. You mentioned there you started your first business in 2004. What kind of, was there a catalyst that led you to, I guess, starting Equality Institute, or was it something that had just evolved over time?
Yeah. So as I was, planning weddings, I ended up planning weddings for 14 years, and
Wow.
I had that business for a while. But after about the first 5 years, I started getting asked to speak and write, and I did the whole speaker circuit in that industry. And I started training other wedding hospitality and travel professionals on inclusion. And that really excited me a lot more than the wedding planning. And at one point, I was planning weddings in New York City, and,
Wow.
in New York, it's a whole different ball game. I was planning 6-figure weddings, and I was feeling very disconnected from my sense of purpose and why I started the business. And I ended up getting divorced myself. So
Okay.
I basically burned it all down and moved to Chicago, rebuilt my life, and essentially evolved my business away from weddings and into inclusion work more broadly, with a specific focus on client-facing employees, people in sales.
Yeah.
Because that's what I knew. That's really the background that I was in, was helping other folks who do business with clients not accidentally offend those clients, build more authentic relationships with those clients.
Yes. Well, it's interesting that because we all have our own, I guess, biases. We've all got our own beliefs and how we've been brought up, and what we've been told is true, and what's been told is right, and what's wrong. And going through the world, we are unfortunately judging machines, and I do this with teams all the time. That as much as we can say, "Hey, do not judge a book by its cover," we still do that because of all of the frames of reference that we actually live our lives through.
That's
Um,
right.
so when you're looking at like from the perspective of planning all the weddings and all the stuff that you would have had to have dealt with, because I'm sure there would have been some great couples and great families to work with, and there would have been some absolutely challenging ones. You could probably do a reality show on that.
Oh,
What was,
I was contracted to at one point.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, we didn't get it off the ground, but I was, yeah, I had an agreement, I had a deal.
Wow. So I was going to ask you, what were some of the biggest challenges around that from a client-facing point of view, being having access to all these different types of people with different backgrounds,
Mhm.
and when we talk about diversity in 2025, there's lots of different elements of diversity which I'd love to delve into from a client-facing point of view. But what were some of the
Yeah.
biggest, I guess, lessons from that time for you?
Well, the main lesson was about all the assumptions we make about others, right? And so let's just take the wedding industry as an example. I mean, the wedding industry at that original time was one bride and one groom.
Yeah.
And so we look at all the forms, bride's name, groom's name, bridal party, groomsmen, all of the things that are super gendered.
Mm,
And so then when a same-sex couple was calling a planner or a hotel or wherever about working on their wedding,
yeah.
we were programmed, those professionals were programmed to say, so what's the name of the groom?
Mm,
Or, do you have your bridesmaids picked out? Like those types of assumptions that are built in to those questions.
yeah.
And it's not just in the conversations, but it's in the forms, it's in the marketing, it's in the structure and layout of spaces and how there's the suites that are set up in wedding venues. So there's a lot of different places in which these norms are built in,
Mm,
and those norms are based on assumptions. And so in client facing roles in any industry, when we're interacting with clients and with customers, we tend to be making assumptions about them. We tend to be make assumptions really quickly based on how our brain operates to sort of make shortcuts, right?
yeah.
Our brain is incredibly efficient, and to categorize all of the millions of stimuli that are coming to us in any second, we are essentially putting people in little boxes in our brain, and those boxes are stereotypes, they're labels,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
so we reconnect with those stereotypes in an instant as we meet someone for the first time. Those first impressions can often get stuck. So, one of the things I talk to my clients about and I speak about on stage is taking a pause, and instead of making assumptions, be more curious. And
Mm,
you know so those are some real challenges that come up. The assumptions are insidious because, listen, when we make a mistaken assumption in front of a client, we can lose that relationship in an instant, right?
yeah.
Or a potential client. If
Yeah.
we're assuming something about them before we've even really got to know them, then we can really damage trust.
It's a great point you make, and as you were talking, I was reflecting. We had an event at our local football club here, and when football, it's Australian football.
Sure.
I run the women's program here, and we have a pride round every year, every season,
Mm-hmm.
where we celebrate inclusion, diversity, LGBTQI, etc. If I didn't say that right, but you get the point. But we
Yeah.
had we had a speaker come in from one of the elite sporting organizations, and she's referred to as they them. So she's I guess non-binary. So just
Mm-hmm.
just little things like that when introducing her or
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation, how easy is it for us to just go to the gender that we observe, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the, I guess, the nomination or the value that they place on themselves in terms of their name.
Mm-hmm.
Just little things. And but what we were talking about before and afterwards was the importance of building trust, because I
Mm-hmm.
know you talk a lot about how not to accidentally offend. Because I don't think many people out there, well, certainly in business, intentionally go out to offend people and certainly
Right.
to offend customers. But it's this trust factor that needs to be really established in the first place, and that's what we always talk about in sales is establishing the trust. So I introduced this lady, and we're having a conversation. I was reading her statistics, and she's been playing AFL footy for like 10 years, and she's one of the best players in the league in the country. And I said it once. I referred to her as her once, but I corrected myself. But she said it was okay because we've established an understanding, and she had the appreciation that it wasn't intentional, but I corrected it.
Hmm.
So but as you were saying that, it was just so easy to make that mistake.
It is. And I noticed as you were talking about that person, you still today, just now, you were saying her and she, right?
Correct.
But
Correct.
they use they them
They.
pronouns.
Correct.
Right? It is a hard habit to break.
It
I will
is.
tell you, I agree. I have my niece, my brother's child is non-binary. They use they them pronouns. It was hard for me to get
Yeah.
used to that. But we know the reality is, just taking they them as an example, we actually use the singular they all the time. We
Yes.
use it without even realizing it,
Yeah.
when we don't know someone's gender. So if
Mm.
someone left behind their phone or a water bottle in a room, we say, if someone left behind their phone. We don't know the gender of the person that left the phone, but we use the singular they all the time.
Yeah.
We just don't even realize it. So I think it is important to sort of retrain ourselves that the singular they can mean one person,
Mm.
and that it's really the pronoun that some folks are most identify with.
Mm.
I personally can't relate to that, but I also respect that gender is not just a binary with two ways of living and experiencing the world.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. But as you said, I still do it, but my
yeah,
my intention never is to offend, but my intention is
sure.
to understand. And this is how we should be treating like all people anyway, and particular
Hmm.
customers in terms of how do I adjust my style to suit the person, and how do I start to see the person through their eyes in terms of how they see the world, not how I see the world. Because if I do, I'm just projecting onto them, which in many cases comes from, we talked about assumptions. It assumes that you should see the world through how I see the world because that's my version of reality.
Exactly, exactly. And at the end of the day, it's kind of a selfish way of being, right?
Well,
But
exactly
it's
right.
just how we're programmed. It's how
Yeah.
it's how we're wired.
Yeah.
But how can we really truly know what a customer, what a client is looking for, what they truly need, if we're making assumptions? How do
Yeah.
we truly understand what someone's capable of if we're making assumptions about that? Or who they truly are if we're making assumptions? So really, the antidote to all of this is a spirit of kind curiosity, and a
Mm.
willingness to try.
Totally. Totally. It's funny, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about the difference between knowing who you are and what you do. And I mean, Simon
Hmm.
Sinek talks a lot about this in Start With Why, but they were specifically talking about situations where you're at a networking event or you're in a business sort of conversation, and the normal questions we ask people is, what do you do? And
Hmm.
most of us can articulate that and probably give great detail about what it is we specifically do because it's something that's tangible you can see. But when you ask the question, who are you? It's a lot more difficult because most people don't necessarily have the language skills to be able to articulate that. And so in a sales environment, we often lead with what we do and it's all about us, not lead from the curiosity point in terms of who is this person? How do I get to know this person and start to appreciate how they see the world so I can then adjust my style to match that, which increases the level of influence I potentially can have with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll tell you that having those listening skills and truly understanding who someone is part of what made me successful as a wedding planner. Because a wedding is truly a reflection of who the couple is, right? And helping them create an experience for their guests and for themselves that truly reflects who they are.
Mm,
It requires those deeper conversations where all of that is uncovered, which means there's a possibility of creating something that's much more meaningful, much more personal, much more customized. Get them to, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, there's more business to be made. There's more other people that can be involved in the process. That can
yeah,
be other vendors that we pull in if we truly understand who they are, and how that can influence what the wedding was at that
yeah,
time.
yeah. Not that you'd be necessarily doing it, Bernadette, for the referrals, but that would just be a byproduct, wouldn't it?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to provide exceptional customer service. And it's a, it provides, you get the loyalty
Totally,
and,
totally,
and the referrals. Absolutely.
absolutely. So let's talk about then, because we touched a little bit on assumptions, but I know you do a lot of work around how to not accidentally offend people and particularly build more real, more authentic relationships with people,
Hmm.
and particularly clients and potential clients who are ever increasingly more diverse. So
Yeah.
can we first maybe just for people listening to this because they might have heard this diversity inclusion narrative in their organizations or just in
Hmm.
on social media and so forth, but
Hmm.
is there a way that you typically explain this concept of diversity and how
Sure.
wide it is to give people context?
Sure. So when I think about diversity, I just think of all different kinds of people, all different kinds of lived experiences, which can include everything from someone's socioeconomic status, religion, um, college level or education level, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, all of it and beyond, right? So diversity, it means everyone. Everyone
Mm,
is diverse. It's a diverse world, so all of that sort of fits into the umbrella of diversity, and one of the things I say is diversity means everyone. It means
mm,
everyone. And I think that a lot of times now we've sort of, at least here in the US, diversity has kind of become a dirty word, but everyone is diverse. We all
yep,
have something going on, we all have our own traumas from our childhood. We all have our own stuff, right? We all medical
yep,
conditions, all of it
yep,
contributes to diversity.
yeah. So it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking back in my bag carrying days when I was in sales, there was a
Mm-hmm.
stereotype that executive assistants, for example, were always female.
Sure.
And I went into a number of my large customers, and they had executive assistants who were male.
Mm.
Now, that's diverse in itself, but then the
Yeah.
assumptions that sit behind that is most people then stereotype, well, an executive assistant who's in a customer facing role, they must be gay, for example,
Yeah.
right? And so the
Sure.
assumption that we can make. Now, whether they were or not, that was sometimes the stereotype that we actually placed upon them because we think, oh,
Mm-hmm.
a certain role in a certain company carrying a certain status must be linked to a certain
Mm-hmm.
area of diversity or certain stereotype,
That's
which is
right.
which is really challenging. It's like also the people who are selling to a couple and the salesperson, for whatever reason, directs their attention to the male, particularly when it comes to a car or a big purchase, thinking that
Mm-hmm.
he's the man of the house and therefore he must be making all the decisions, which is an
That's right.
assumption.
That's exactly an assumption. That's right. I mean, and on and on. I mean, there are lots of assumptions about, let's just say there's a meeting and a black woman is there and she's in the meeting room. There could be an assumption that she's an assistant rather than the director, right? So that's a super common assumption. There, a common assumption of a man with a wedding ring must be married to a woman,
Yep.
right? And he could be married to a man. So a
Yeah.
lot of times, they get questions like, so what does your wife do? Right?
Which when you think of it, it can be considered to be an innocent question, but in today's, I guess, ever more diverse world, you can't necessarily just ask that or assume that that is the case. So,
Yeah. And it is an innocent question, but it also makes things awkward in
yes.
that moment, right? That person has to then correct you, or they then have to come out, which is a vulnerable position because they don't know how you're going to react, right? And so you're instantly making things awkward
Yeah.
instead of saying, "Oh, so I see you. It looks like you're married. What does your partner do?" Right?
Yeah.
So instead of asking a more open-ended question to sort of get to the same place of building rapport,
Mm.
there's an assumption built in, and so what we're trying to do is minimize that awkwardness, right, and get
Yeah.
to the place of genuine connection much more quickly. And here in the US, we have this awful thing called cancel culture, and you might have it there too, but people get canceled for the mistakes they make, the
Yep.
things they say wrong, and
Yeah.
And I think that it has made things a lot worse because
Mm.
now people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing. They're so
Yeah.
afraid of getting canceled that they're stiff. And
Yeah.
that makes things a lot more awkward. They're in their head too much. And I think that that can be really, it can be really hard to build trust when you are, when you're stiff and awkward.
Mm. Yes, we've got it here in Australia as well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's just it's just insane. And it's all of the noise from the externals who are the ones that sit on
Mm-hmm.
their judging seats, who are
Mm-hmm.
probably the most fundamentally flawed individuals on the planet anyway, but they're the ones that are judging others and saying you should be now removed from that position because you shouldn't be saying that and doing that without any element of curiosity or the fact that it wasn't intentional or no, nothing. Just it's just no, no, out, go.
Yeah. And listen, I understand that we have to take responsibility for the impact of the mistakes that we make. Um, that is really important. But I think it's gotten a little extreme. And I think that it's sort of creating more division. What I think the world needs is a lot more connection, not division.
Well, and think about in the world of AI, there seems to be more and more people relying more and more on AI, and through that process, maybe thinking a little bit less for themselves and just saying, well, AI, whatever AI tells me, it must be
Mm-hmm.
correct. So I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, I've got this system there. You don't have to talk to anybody. Just use AI, and it'll bring in clients for you." And I said, "Well, hang on a second. How does that work? Because eventually you still have to work with a client." Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
but it does it all for you, and you just get the money and do your thing, and off you go. So, well, hang on a second. That doesn't make any sense to me.
it doesn't. At the
No.
end of the day, it's still about relationships and the humanity and
Yes.
genuine connection. I mean, at the end of the day, we still want to do business with those we know, like, and trust. That hasn't changed, and there's nothing
No.
that AI is going to change about that.
No. And I say to sales teams all the time, I add one thing to that. It's the know, like, and trust, and then remember. So if you can be
Yeah,
memorable and to the point where you're still front of mind, because people may not be in a buying cycle at the time that you have the interaction with them, but they
sure.
will remember you so that when they are in that buying cycle and ready to make a purchase, you'll be the top of mind because you're memorable, because you've built that
Mm,
rapport and that relationship. So
yeah.
you're going to say something?
Well, I was just curious, Darren. I'm just, you're an expert. You've interviewed 800 or so folks for your show. Tell me, like, how do you stay memorable? I'm just curious.
How do I stay memorable?
What's your trick?
Well, my trick is to be genuinely interested,
Mm,
which
yeah.
is at its core is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I learnt that through a lot of pain, a lot of hard work, a lot of mentoring, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of a lot of counseling.
Sure.
Where my background was being in sales, and I was brought up in a sales environment where it's all about the product, it's all about the marketing, it's all about the sale, it's all about the service. So the
Mm-hmm.
the the thought process was we have the best product, we've got the best service, so everybody's going to want this, so just go and sell the service, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I realized was it's not about the product because the customers don't want about the product. They want to actually have a connection because they want to do
Mm-hmm.
business with a person. So how do you actually start to be curious? And I learnt this over time that if you are genuinely, and this you can't fake this, you've got to be genuinely interested in another human being. Through that
Yeah.
process, you'll actually, in many cases, become interesting to them. And when you're interesting to them, they're more likely to now lean in and at least explore what we could do together or what we could create together or what you might have as an offering. Right. So it's
Yeah.
it's that. And it has to be genuine. So I
Yeah.
teach sales teams, for example, how to build rapport. And I
Mm-hmm.
give them techniques on how to do it, but I say everything you do has to be real. Simple things like looking
Mm-hmm.
somebody in the eye. Simple
Sure.
things like remembering their name and using their name.
Yeah.
Simple things like asking questions and then shutting up.
That's a good one. Yeah. And speaking of names, by the way, sometimes we don't know how to pronounce someone's name,
Correct.
right? And we're going into a meeting with someone whose name we don't know how to pronounce. So
Yes.
it's okay to ask. And it's also okay to go to YouTube and look up that person and see if they've ever done an interview and learn their name
Yeah.
and spell it out phonetically and get yourself ready, or to find someone else with that name on
Mm,
YouTube. But those things are really, really matter. It helps
mm.
people feel seen.
Yeah, it does. It does. So in the work that you do a lot of work with sales and customer service and client-facing individuals.
Hmm.
When you do your keynotes, when you work with clients and they bring you in to say, hey, we desperately need some help. We're not getting the numbers. We're not getting the cut through. Our employee engagement numbers or our customer engagement numbers are not where they need to be. Where do you start? So what's the first thing that you do with an organization that perhaps is not getting the cut through and the engagement that they ideally would like?
Well, first, I want to understand a little bit about the stories they've heard. So if it's a keynote, that's one thing. But if it's more of a workshop, then I want let's unearth the problems and
Mm,
let's start with the assumptions. So let's talk about assumptions first, because those are the core of a lot of the problems. So I want to hear the stories. I want to hear the stories about the mistakes people have made, about the times they've stepped in it. I want to hear stories about assumptions people have made about them that have felt awkward, because we've all had those mistaken assumptions made about us as well.
yeah,
And I want to unearth those things. And by the way, I also tell stories of mistaken assumptions that I've made, because I am not holier than thou. I am not here to preach. I am here to sort of get in it with them and say, you know what? I'm not perfect. We're all on this journey together. We're
mm,
all learning together. And by the way, here are some really embarrassing stories. So, but having those kind of that dialogue up front, it loosens people up,
yeah,
right? It gives it, we laugh.
yeah,
There's relatability, right? Because we can all talk about mistakes. And
totally.
I think that it's something that people aren't given enough permission to talk about, because we have this, sense of we have to be perfect. There's sense
Mm,
of perfectionism that causes people to have a little bit of, they're paralyzed a little bit. They're stiff
yeah,
a little bit, right? And so
yeah.
when we can unearth the mistakes right away and we can have a good laugh about them, and we've all experienced on either end giving or receiving mistaken assumptions, it's automatically loosening people up and getting ready to start solving these problems.
Because we're dealing with humans, right? And humans as a
Yeah.
species, we are highly dysfunctional in many ways, but I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever met a perfect human or the perfect specimen.
Right. Exactly. Even the Dalai Lama, and I haven't met him. But yeah,
And certainly not some of the politicians we have around the world right now.
that's right. The quote unquote leaders. Yes.
The leaders, exactly, in those big quotation marks. And so when you teach people to do that and almost like letting down their guards, being
Yeah.
real, being authentic, and this word authentic gets thrown around, I think, a lot, a lot. Just be authentic, but owning it and being aware of the impressions that we're creating. Because the thing that people need to understand is when you're meeting somebody for the first time, yes, that's a first impression.
Yeah.
But even the people you work with on a regular basis, you're continuing to create those impressions.
That's right.
And if you can own that and you're real with that, be open to watching. And this is where we talked a little bit before the press record around emotional intelligence and reading the room. So if you say something that you think didn't quite land, then own it. All right. Ask a question, be curious and say,
Mhm.
did I mispronounce your name or did I make
Yeah.
a wrong assumption? And just own that and say, hey, that's not my intention.
That's right. That's right. And the sooner you can recover, the better, because I think that we have this other problem of, when we find out that we've made a mistake, we tend to over apologize and try to overcompensate, and then it becomes this can become a real long, drawn out, awkward situation.
Yeah.
And then the person that you've accidentally offended feels like they then have to comfort you, right?
Or
And
save you.
exactly, exactly. But recovery doesn't have to be that way.
No.
It can just be a matter of simply saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm still learning, and I'm going to get it right next time."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's it. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be a long, drawn out, awkward, drama.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you talk about having a method known as ARC.
Hmm.
Can
Hmm.
you sort of articulate that? And I'm happy for you to go as deep or as shallow as you'd like, but it seems to me is to be a really fundamental but powerful method to help people through this, but also in the process build levels of credibility so that the impressions that we are creating can be more sustainable and maybe tip the scales in our favor of being in a position to ethically influence, particularly customers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the arc has a variety of contexts. You can really use it in any scenario in which you're genuinely seeking to understand. But ARC stands for Ask, Respect, Connect. And the idea is that we're looking to be more kindly curious about folks who are different from us in any way. But we want to be more kindly curious. So we're always going to start with a question, the ask, from a place of curiosity, not confrontation.
Mm,
Sometimes this means that we get permission to ask, hey, is it okay if I ask you something? Sometimes it means that we share a little bit of our own experience first. Hey, when I first started working here, it was, really tough. Or, hey, when I was buying my first home, I really struggled with this. How's it going for you?
mm,
And so we might want to kind of warm people up by sharing just a little bit of something ourselves that can be, a little bit, tiny bit vulnerable.
yeah.
But we're looking to ask from this place of curiosity, not confrontation. We always want to ask open ended questions, and we want to make sure we then respect. So that's the R. The R is respect. That means we're not dismissing what we hear. We're not interrupting. We're not listening to respond. We're being fully present. And it's a respect is a matter of active listening. And then we always close with the C, which is connect. Now, connect ties it all together. And it could be a place where we get into a little bit of action. Maybe you say, okay, and maybe we're validating what we heard, or we're paraphrasing what we heard.
Mm,
Okay, so you're telling me that, in terms of your home buying process, you've been struggling with this. Well, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. And here's what we can do about that. Right. So the connect kind of ties it all together. And
yeah.
it's a way to sort of get to validate what you heard and then move into a little bit of action. And you could repeat the arc as often as you want throughout a conversation. But it's a great way to build rapport. It's a great way to be curious about folks who are on your team or folks who are a new client or a prospective client. And then I also teach the arc in the context of gently calling someone out if you hear something inappropriate or offensive. So
Mm,
sometimes this means that we hear someone on our team, on the sales team, who says something that's a little bit awkward or
yeah.
inappropriate. Or maybe we hear, potentially a client might say something like that. And we can use the ARC method as well in that context to kind of cause someone, invite someone to reflect on their words. Hey, can you explain what you meant when you said that? Or I
Mm,
didn't quite understand what you're referring to. Can you tell me more about what you mean? Just to sort of prompt someone to reflect on their words without assuming their intention. We don't want to
yes.
assume bad intention, right? We don't
No,
want to make any assumptions at all.
no. And that's the key thing, assumptions, because the interesting thing, particularly from a selling point of view, salespeople are taught to ask questions, but the unfortunate thing for most of them is those questions tend to be they think they're open, but they're actually
Mm-hmm.
quite guided towards the
Mm-hmm.
outcome that they have already predetermined that I need to be able to close this customer. So how do I ask the questions to get them closer to my agenda to close the deal?
Sure.
Versus, well, hang on, I just got to ask questions because I don't know. And how much of this is attitude? So coming
Mm-hmm.
into it and having that attitude of curiosity, wanting to know, is there a problem? Is there a challenge? Is there something that needs to be done? Versus just leading with, hey, I'm just going to ask some questions and I'm going to
Right.
respect you, but I'm going to connect. So how do you see this played out? Because I'm sure you can see it played on a surface level. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Bernadette, we get this. We just ask some questions. We do some active listening. I'm respecting the person. We're building a connection, and then I'm going to close, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
there are others that say, you know what? It's not about the close. It's about how do I build a connection that might lead to a sale in 2 weeks' time, 2 days' time, 2 years' time. But in the process, we build a level of credibility that we are the only vendor or we're the only person that they're ever going to want to do business with.
Yeah, so the arc is not about surface level conversations. It's about building deeper relationships, more meaningful relationships, more authentic relationships, right? And so it challenges us to go below the surface and go below the script,
Mm,
and it invites us to see what is the possibility here with this prospective client or this client. What are the ways that I can solve their problem, or who are the people that I can refer them to that might be able to also solve their problem, and kind of make it a more customized experience. Like, how, it doesn't have to be in the moment. It can be something that's longer term, but we get to that place of trust by following the arc through
mm,
this energy, this spirit of kind curiosity.
yeah. So it's not car. It's because some people think I'm just going to connect. I'm going to connect and then ask questions. Then I'm going to respect because then I want to close.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's People love talking about themselves,
They do.
right? They do. People love it, and they might not even realize it, but they do, right? And
Yeah.
so we have to approach them with kind curiosity.
Yeah.
And you know what? I practice this all the time. In my sales conversations with prospective clients, and in the conversations I have with real clients. But I also practice this when I'm riding in the car with my son. I
Hmm.
practice this when I go to play pickleball, and there's some new person that I've never played with before at open play. It's
Yeah.
an opportunity for me all the time to be looking to build more authentic relationships, to go a little bit deeper.
Yes. And it needs to be genuine curiosity, not surface
Yes,
level, that you're going to ask these questions in order to get something.
that's right. But you know what a beautiful world it would be if we were a little bit more kindly curious about others, right? If we didn't make assumptions about who someone was, about what they needed, about what they were capable of, and instead we let them tell us,
Yeah.
and we were trustworthy enough for people to tell us. It would be beautiful.
Well, it would be. But I guess, again, coming back to this topic of diversity, would
Hmm.
that mean that everybody would be the same and therefore we wouldn't have diversity?
No, because everyone has such a unique sense of what they need, right? And what's going to motivate someone, and how the custom features that someone wants is going to be different from what someone else wants. And
Yeah.
so we can better understand someone's lived experiences
Yeah.
and how that impacts what we have to offer them, or what we have to upsell them. Let's be
Yes.
honest, that's part of it too. How we can customize this experience for them.
Yeah.
We're not going to get to that point unless we have those kindly curious questions, and we build this trust that comes with following the arc.
Absolutely. And that's the key thing because having a predetermined outcome is spells potential danger because you might actually have some blind spots that you ask a
Mhm.
question, you're not actively listening. The potential customer might give you some information that you haven't even thought about that you now miss
That's
because you have
right.
a prerogative to try to sell them this particular widget where the opportunity could actually be bigger, but you then miss it because you weren't genuinely curious about it.
That's right. That's exactly. And listen, I've made that mistake in my own business,
Yes.
right? And that's a mistake I never want to make again, right?
Yeah.
So and that's the type of thing I talk about in my work. Is I talk about my mistakes because we need to normalize it.
Mm.
And that goes a long way towards building trust as well.
Well, that does. And the question I was going to ask you around all of this is nothing of what we've spoken about today is rocket science. And if people
That's
listening
right.
to this, they would agree that, yeah, this makes perfect sense. This is common sense. But the question we always have to ask ourselves is, are we actually applying this with common practice?
Hmm.
Are we trying to overcomplicate things, right? But if you can sit down and have a genuine conversation with somebody, whether it be at pickleball, whether it be with your son driving, whether it be when you get a coffee, asking the person a few questions and being genuinely interested in the person that's serving your coffee, you'd be amazed at what you can find out. That you walk out of that coffee shop now a better person for having met that person because they've left something as an impression on you. That if you didn't ask the question, you'd never find out.
That's right. And imagine the impact that you may have made on that person who's just working at the coffee shop and maybe doesn't necessarily get those types of folks who care enough, right?
Mm,
To go those extra question or two, right? And so it makes their day. It has the ability to have a ripple effect
yeah.
when people feel seen, when they feel heard and understood, then they might feel a little bit more willing to give that back, to pay it
Mm,
forward, to and also to refer you.
yeah. Which is a byproduct of the law of reciprocity, but you don't do it for the referral. That's just a
You
nice
don't.
thing to have at the end.
That's right.
So in the
Exactly.
keynotes that you do, I'm sure there are some people within the audiences, or even maybe some executives in the companies that say, "Oh, come on, Bernadette, this is too simple. Has to be something you don't understand. We're a very, very complex business, and we're dealing with very highly complex people." What do you say to people? Because I know also on your LinkedIn page, you're not only a speaker, you're an author, you're also a podcaster, which I'll talk about in a second. But it also mentions you're an optimist as well. So what do
I
you
sure am.
say to people? What do you say to organizations who saying, "Oh, this is just too simple. This is too simple. You don't understand our environment. We are very highly complex. We're highly sophisticated. We're highly strategic."
Well, that's the thing, is the more complexity there is in humans, like, as just by human nature, we are diverse, right? We are incredibly complex. We have intersecting experiences. We all have different lived experiences. One thing that's going to cut through all of that and really get to what we need to know is curiosity, right? Because it's so complex, there can be the tendency to use assumptions as a shortcut. But curiosity is what's going to get us to that deeper level.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be overly complicated. Sales leaders, they have enough stuff to worry about. They have goals to meet, they have product knowledge they need to be experts in.
Mm,
Um, they don't need to know all of the nuances of every culture, of every race, of all the LGBTQ letters. Forget about all that. That's a lot to remember, right? You don't have to know all of the answers to build rapport. You
yeah.
just have to be really curious in a kind
That's it.
way. And
That's
so
it.
it's taking all of the complexity and it's distilling it into a pretty simple formula that cuts across all dimensions of diversity, that cuts across all different types of conversations with every kind of human. And it just gives us permission to be a little bit more kindly curious.
And don't make it about you.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, I'm conscious of time. You also mentioned before we press record that, and I thought I'd mention it as well. You're a podcaster, and podcast is 5 things in 15 minutes. And you've been doing live streaming also. But you
Mm-hmm.
said interestingly, most of my podcast episodes are about 20 minutes, so I should change the title.
So the thing is, so I have my podcast is 5 things in 15 minutes, good vibes and DEI, and so I have 5 stories every week, right?
Okay,
And so the 5 news stories that I find, we go through those in definitely 15 minutes.
okay,
But I have a guest, right? And my guest wants to talk about their book or their whatever, right? So
yeah.
we have a little bit of time for that. So that's why it usually takes about 22 minutes to get through an episode. But if someone truly only wants the 5 things,
15
they
minutes
can get
done.
that in they
Then
can
they
get
can
that in 50. Yep.
flick up or put it on to 4 times speed and get to the
That's
end.
right. That's right. Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Hey, Bernard, it's been a fabulous conversation. I really enjoyed this. For people who want to know more about you, connect with you, get access to the podcast and so forth, where's the best place for them to do that? Where do you hang out, and how do people reach you?
Find me on bernadettesmith.com and on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn, which has links to socials. I can easily find my podcast if you search Good Vibes and DEI, or even just search my name. You'll find my show. It's a really good energy show, and and the good vibes spirit, the spirit of non-judgment, the spirit of, hey, we're all in this together, we're just trying to do the best we can. That is the energy I bring to this work. And I try to have a lot of fun with it, because that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need fun, we need
Yeah.
optimism, we need hope.
And not taking ourselves so seriously, not being one of
That's
those
right.
stiffs that have to actually be really prim and proper. Just be you,
Yeah,
but be curious. And that's the
that's
key
not me at
message.
all. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Love it.
So yeah, thanks, Darren. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, like thank you, and I'll put those on the show notes. And hey, keep up the great work. And I know that the ARC method is it's a really foundational but fundamental but profound method. If people just embraced it by asking, showing respect, and also connecting, it's amazing what can transpire through that process. But the underlying core, I guess, purpose is to be endlessly optimistically curious.
Yeah, exactly. With the
Love it.
spirit of kindness. Yes,
Brilliant. Love
exactly.
your work. Keep it
Thanks,
up. And
Darren.
thanks so much for being a great guest on the podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.